Tiwanaku, also known as Tiwanaku, is one of the most enigmatic and ancient archaeological sites in South America, located approximately 4,000 meters above sea level on the Bolivian Altiplano Plateau near Lake Titicaca. This site has fascinated explorers, archaeologists, and travelers for centuries. What is most puzzling are its impressive buildings, monuments, and sculptures, which seem to defy the technical capabilities of pre-Columbian civilizations. Over time, many theories have been put forward about the origin, purpose, and age of Tiwanaku, some based on astronomical alignment and conventional chronology, while others suggest a connection to civilizations lost millennia ago. Among the most notable structures are the Acapana Pyramid, the Gate of the Sun, the Temple of Kalasasaya, and the Ponce and Bennett monoliths. What most surprises archaeologists is the precision in the assembly of the stone blocks, some of which weigh tens of tons. These stones, in many cases, are carved with such precision that a sheet of paper could not be inserted between the blocks. The Acapana Pyramid, for example, is a structure of 7 stepped terraces that was once covered with finely carved stones. Although it is now eroded, the remains of its design suggest impressive hydraulic engineering skills, as there was a sophisticated system of underground channels for rainwater drainage. Another enigmatic example is the Sun Gate, a single-piece andesite monolith weighing approximately 10 tons. The intricate carving at the top, with depictions of anthropomorphic figures and astronomical symbols, has been the subject of intense study. Some experts believe these figures represent a solar and lunar calendar, which would indicate that the builders of Tiwanaku possessed profound astronomical knowledge. The Ponce and Bennett monoliths are stone sculptures depicting human figures with details of clothing and ritual objects. Fascinatingly, these monoliths have styles that seem ahead of their time, displaying a level of mastery in stone carving that was not expected from a civilization of that time. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Andes in the 16th century, they were amazed by the ruins of Tiwanaku. Chroniclers of the time wondered how an indigenous civilization, which they believed to be technologically backward, had been able to build such structures. In their writings, they expressed both perplexity and admiration for the ruins. Pedro Chiesa de Leon, in his Chronicle of Peru, 1553, wrote, "Tiwanaku seems to have been built by giants. So enormous are its stones, and so intricate their shape. None of the indigenous people know with certainty who erected them or for what purpose." Chiesa de Leon describes the magnitude of the ruins and expresses his astonishment at the lack of knowledge among the locals about their origin. Other chroniclers, such as José de Acosta, in his work Historia Natural y Moral de las Indias, 1590, also mention Tiwanaku. Acosta wrote, "They are ruins so ancient that the inhabitants themselves cannot say where they came from or who built them." One of the most fascinating aspects of Tiwanaku is the controversy over its age. The traditional chronology based on archaeology holds that the Tiwanaku civilization flourished between 400 and 1000 AD. However, some researchers believe the ruins are much older, even proposing a date thousands of years earlier. One of the most widespread theories about the age of Tiwanaku is based on the astronomical alignment of its structures. Researchers such as Arthur Posnanski, an Austrian-Bolivian engineer and archaeologist, argued that the complex was designed as an astronomical observatory. Posnanski argued that the position of the solstices and equinoxes in relation to the monuments suggests that Tiwanaku was built approximately 15,000 years ago, long before any known pre-Columbian civilizations. Posnanski, in his work Tiwanaku, The Cradle of American Man, 1945, wrote, "The orientation of the stone blocks at Kalasasaya with respect to the solstices and equinoxes suggests an extremely early date for the founding of Tiwanaku. Changes in the tilt of the Earth's axis since that time reinforce this hypothesis." Posnanski argued that variations in the Earth's tilt over the past millennia should have affected the accuracy of astronomical alignments at Tiwanaku. If his hypothesis is correct, then the construction of Tiwanaku could have occurred in the distant past, radically changing human history in this region. Other theories propose that the stone blocks were transported using advanced engineering techniques that we still do not fully understand. The lack of nearby quarries, the hardness of the stones, and the colossal weight of some blocks have led some researchers to suggest that the builders may have used magnetic levitation methods or lost technology, although these ideas are considered marginal in mainstream archaeology. The Aymara people have their own legends about the site. According to oral tradition, Tiwanaku was the place where the gods created humanity. The best-known legend is that of the god Viracocha, who emerged from the waters of Lake Titicaca and created the sun, moon, and stars at Tiwanaku. Viracocha also created the first human beings from stone at this location and then dispersed them throughout the world. This connection between Tiwanaku and cosmogonic myths reinforces the idea that the site not only had an astronomical and ceremonial function, but was also considered sacred. Tiwanaku remains one of the greatest mysteries of Andean archaeology. Its constructions, as enigmatic as they are impressive, defy conventional explanations about the technical capabilities of pre-Columbian civilizations. The Spanish chroniclers who visited it in the 16th century were equally perplexed, and modern theories about its age and purpose continue to be debated. Whether as an astronomical observatory, a ceremonial center, or a sacred city, Tiwanaku holds secrets that, even after centuries of study, we have yet to fully unravel. The key to its true history may lie in a deeper understanding of the relationship between ancient Andean civilizations and the cosmos. What are the mysteries hidden in Ancash? The Chavin culture developed between 1200 BC and 200 BC and was one of the most important of the pre-Inca period, located in what is now the Chavin de Huanta district in the Huari province of Ancash. The religious center of Chavin de Huanta became an important pilgrimage site, and Chavin art was equally influential in contemporary and later cultures from the Paracas to the Incas, helping to spread Chavin images and ideas and establish the first universal Andean belief system. The Chavin had advanced knowledge of architecture, engineering, and sculpture, and a deep belief in deities whom they sought to emulate. One of the most important Chavin gods was the staff god, who is the most likely subject for the famous central figure on the Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku. A precursor to the Andean creator god Viracocha, the staff god was associated with agricultural fertility and usually holds a staff in each hand, but is also represented in a statue from the new temple at the Chavin de Huanta cult site. This half-meter-high figure represents the duality of male and female, holding a spondylus shell in one hand and a strombus shell in the other. Another celebrated representation from the same site is the Raimondi Stela, a 2-meter-high granite slab with the god incised in low relief as a gender-neutral figure with clawed feet, talons, and fangs, in an image that can be read in 2 directions. A second important Chavin deity was the fanged jaguar god, also a popular subject in Chavin art. Chavin religious ceremonies involved multisensory spectacles, including bloodletting and ritual sacrifices, which could be performed in public spaces with up to 1,500 people or in the more restricted and exclusive environments of the inner temple complexes. An important feature of the cult was the priesthood of shamans who would place themselves in trances by means of hallucinogenic plants such as coca leaves and certain types of cactus and mushrooms. An added aura of religious mystery was achieved by the burning of incense, priests suddenly appearing above the temples via secret internal staircases, and a cacophony of musical sounds from singers and conch-shell trumpets. The most important religious center of Chavin was Chavin de Huanta in the Mosna Valley, which was used for more than 5 centuries and became a well-known pilgrimage site throughout the Andean region. The site is significantly located at the meeting point of 2 rivers, a typical Andean tradition, the Mosna and the Huaxexa. Ancient landslides left fertile terraces, and the proximity of many springs and a wide and varied supply of stones for monumental construction projects ensured the site's growth. At its peak, the center had 2,000 to 3,000 inhabitants and covered about 100 acres. The old temple dates from 750 BC and is currently a complex of buildings that together form a U. In the center, 2 staircases descend to a circular sunken court. The walls of the buildings are lined with square and rectangular stones bearing images of shamanic, transformational creatures sculpted in low relief. The figures combine human features with jaguar fangs and claws and wear serpent headdresses symbolizing spiritual visions. The 4.5 meters tall lance monolith takes the form of a traditional Andean foot plow and is located deep within the inner labyrinth of the old temple. It depicts a supernatural creature with fangs and claws decorated with serpents. The creature points down with one hand and up with the other, perhaps indicative of its rulership over the terrestrial and celestial realms. It is thought that this monolith may have been the site of an ancient oracle that provided answers to the demands of pilgrims, who in turn left offerings of gold, obsidian, shells, and ceramics. There were also many stone chambers in the inner temple through which water flowed under pressure, thus creating a rumbling sound within the confines of the chambers and evoking accompaniment to the oracle's pronouncements. The most striking feature of the new temple, 500 BC, which was actually an extension of the old temple complex, are the 100 surviving stone heads that once protruded from the outer walls. These form a transformational series of progressive changes from human to jaguar form. The temple, in its new form, measured 100 meters in length and reached a height of 16 meters with 3 levels. Its black and white entrance portal is flanked on each side by a simple column. One bears the image of an eagle, the other a falcon, representing the feminine and masculine respectively in a typical Chavin example of duality. Chavin art is laden with images of felines, especially jaguars, snakes, and predatory animals, as well as supernatural beings, sometimes with fierce, fanged stares. The creatures are sometimes dynamic, presented in 2 states at once, and designed to both confuse and surprise. The images are also often anatropic. They can be viewed from different directions. As art historian R.R. Stone summarizes, a strong perceptual effect, certainly calculated by the Chavin artists, inspires confusion, surprise, fear, and terror through the use of dynamic and changing images that contain several readings depending on the direction from which they are viewed. It is equally notable that many of the animals in Chavin images are from the distant lowland forests and thus illustrate the distant influence reached by Chavin culture, a point further confirmed by the presence of Chavin de Huanta in votive offerings from cultures hundreds of kilometers away. The staff god was another popular theme in Chavin sculpture, ceramics and textiles. The painted cotton textiles of Chavin are, in fact, the earliest examples from any Andean culture and take the form of tapestries, belts and garments. What mysteries do the Nazca civilization, creators of enigmatic wonders like this, still hide? The Peruvian coast is a gigantic desert, despite being located in tropical America. The Andes mountain range, which borders it to the east, and the Pacific Ocean, which borders it to the west, create this condition. Despite this, the many rivers that descend from the mountain range to the coast cut across sections of the vast desert, generating oasis-like valleys where highly complex societies developed throughout Peru's ancient history. Flourishing between 200 BC and 600 AD, Nazca is the name by which we know today one of the most famous pre-Columbian cultures in the entire Andes, renowned worldwide for its fine polychrome pottery and the impressive and enigmatic lines and figures drawn on the plains of Palpa and San Jose. The Nazca culture had its main center of development in the Nazca River basin. The Nazca were contemporary with and later surpassed by the Paracas culture, and many sites of this culture have been discovered beneath Nazca settlements. Politically, the Nazca civilization has been described as a collection of chiefdoms that occasionally acted in unison out of mutual interest rather than as a single state unit. Or as M.E. Mosley has put it, individuality with cultural coherence but without integrated or large-scale power were the Nazca traces. This interpretation is reinforced by Nazca art and architecture, which show common themes across settlements, but at the same time, there is a general lack of uniformity in urban planning or evidence of centralization. The maximum population of the Nazca has been estimated at 25,000 people, scattered throughout small villages that were typically built on terraced slopes near irrigated floodplains. The tombs, sometimes located below 4.5 meters deep and accessible through a shaft, are the richest sources of Nazca artifacts and reveal many aspects of their culture. Fine pottery and textiles were burned with the dead, and no particular distinction was made between male and female burials. The deceased were mummified, carefully wrapped in textiles, and often placed in a sitting position. Skulls sometimes show deliberate elongation, and we know that the Nazca used tattoos. Founded around 100 BC, Cahuachi, on the south bank of the Nazca River, 50 kilometers inland, was a pilgrimage site and religious capital of the Nazca. It was likely initially considered sacred because it was one of the few locations with a guaranteed year-round water supply. The lack of domestic architecture indicates that it was used as a habitation site. The largest mound, known as the Great Temple, is over 20 meters high. All mounds have an adjacent plaza and are crowned by mud brick walls. The textile scenes also suggest that religious gatherings were connected with harvest festivals, and the trash piles, mostly pottery fragments, indicate ritual celebrations. This trash was deliberately left there so that it would become part of the mound. Consequently, the longer the mound, the more it had been used in rituals. There are further details of the religious ceremonies that may have taken place at Cahuachi depicted in Nazca art, especially on pottery, and many are scenes involving shamans. These religious figures, in a drug-induced trance, appealed to nature spirits to ensure favorable conditions for abundant agriculture. Music was an important part of these rites, as evidenced by ceramic drums and pan flutes in the archaeological record. The principal Nazca god appears to have been the Eyed One, who is depicted in art as a flying deity, wearing ropes of trophy heads. He is often depicted on pottery and textile designs in a horizontal position with serpents flowing from his body. Other characteristic features include large, staring eyes and a snaking tongue. The Nazca drew geoglyphs and cross lines surrounding deserts and hills. These were stylized drawings of animals, plants, and humans, or simple lines connecting sacred sites or marking water sources. Their exact purpose is debated, but the most widely held theory is that they were designed as paths to be walked on in religious rites and processions. These ancient lines were made remarkably easily and quickly by removing the dark, rusty surface of rocks, which lay closely scattered across the colorful, light pampa soil. Most designs are only visible from the air, but some were made on hills and are visible from the ground. The lines could be single, straight, or curved, or in groups, and could intersect one another in complicated networks. Width and length can vary. One of the longest straight lines is 20 kilometers long, and the combined length of the Nazca lines has been estimated at around 1,300 kilometers. The lines that used to describe a specific shape are generally composed of a single continuous line. The designs could be geometric shapes or animals such as a hummingbird, a spider, and even a killer whale. There were also trees, plants, and flowers, as well as human figures. The Nazca have earned a reputation for great artistry, and their finely crafted pottery is an excellent example. Vessels were thin-walled and could take a wide variety of shapes. Distinctive shapes included double-spouted containers with a single handle, and generally bulbous vessels without a flat bottom or base. Plates, cups, jars, effigy drums, and pan flutes were also common. There were also vessels shaped like human heads, no doubt inspired by the Nazca practice of taking trophy heads in battle. Influenced by the early designs of the Paracas culture, Nazca ceramic vessels were decorated with combinations before firing to produce a wide range of vividly rendered patterns depicting gods, shamanic images, crustaceans, condors, monkeys, and shape-shifting mythical creatures, especially felines. The Nazca continued to create a unique style and designs that ranged from the naturalistic to the highly ornamented and then to highly abstract forms. Brown, light purple, and bluish gray were favored color choices, but a very wide range was used, even greater than in any other ancient Andean culture. Backgrounds were usually white, red, or black. Outlining figures in black was another feature and another example of the Nazca delight in line design. The Nazca, like many South American cultures, were fond not only of wool weaving and embroidery, but also of painting plain cotton with an array of colorful images and motifs. The textiles have survived remarkably well, thanks to the extremely dry climate, and show that Nazca weavers possessed the full range of Andean techniques and employed an impressive range of colors and shades that produced intricate and detailed designs. Figures were especially popular in the designs and were often depicted participating in harvest scenes depicting foodstuffs such as corn and beans. Animal figures, similar to those in geoglyphs and ceramic designs, were also a popular subject. Looms, spindles, needles, cotton balls, and dye pots have all been excavated from Nazca sites. Nazca metal workers worked gold into thin sheets that were cut to create silhouettes. They preferred to keep surfaces smooth and reflective. Only a little repoussé work provides economical decoration. The masks they produced were worn over the mouth, and their wearers appeared to have a golden beard and mustache. They also produced masks made entirely of gold, with feathered hair and ornaments for the nose and forehead. These golden masks transformed the face of their wearers and recall the transformation ceremonies performed by shamans, a popular theme in Nazca art. What secrets did this civilization hide? Chimu society developed around 1200 to 1438 AD during the late Middle Horizon on the northern coast of present-day Peru. Heirs to the Moche culture, the Chimu were one of the principal pre-Inca societies, a period of great kingdoms and lordships of local cultures. The coastal Chimu culture, or Lordship of Chimor, which emerged during the decline of the Wari Empire, achieved an advanced political and social organization. Initially, between 900 and 1300 AD, it was a small group located in the ancient Moche Valley and surrounding areas in the territories inhabited centuries earlier by the Moche, their ancestors. Later, during its most developed period, between 1300 and 1470, it expanded its dominions across a vast stretch of northern Peru, from Tumbes to the Huarmey Valley. This kingdom was constantly expanding and was a confederation of small groups that maintained their own myths, language, and customs. For nearly 600 years, the Chimu, with a well-organized army, expanded their territory. Around 1370, they conquered the Lambayeque or Sican culture, which greatly contributed to the development of goldsmithing in Chan Chan. Around 1470, they were defeated and integrated into the Tahuantinsuyu Empire by an army of more than 30,000 soldiers, commanded by Tupac Incayupanqui, son of Pachacutec or Pachacutic Incayupanqui, ninth on the list of Inca emperors of Cusco, shortly before the arrival of the Spanish in America and Peru. According to historical evidence, it was a peaceful conquest, and Chan Chan was not sacked. In addition to bringing Minchansaman to Cusco, the Incas brought gold and silver to adorn the Temple of the Sun, and hundreds of artisans, especially ceramists, goldsmiths, and weavers, assimilating the Chimu culture. Considered the best architects of pre-Inca Peru, they stood out in urban planning for their formidable constructions, exemplified by the Chan Chan Citadel, the Chimu Wall, and the Paramonga Fortress. Among the most important settlements are Farfan and Pacatnamu to the north of the kingdom, and Cerro Orejas and Chan Chan to the south. Of these, the most notable are Pacatnamu in the Jecatepec Valley, composed of several truncated ceremonial pyramids surrounded by walls. These pyramids were likely the residence of the local deities of the sun, the moon, and the sea, and Chan Chan, the largest clay archaeological complex in pre-Hispanic America. The origins of the Chimu kingdom are closely linked to a legendary figure from the sea, Takainamo or Chimor Capac. From Paita or Tumbes, he established a despotic, militaristic state with a hereditary government. The legends of Nalamp in Sican, the mythical founder of Lambayeque, and Takayanamo in Chimu fantastically conveyed the initial wars over these lands. Upon their arrival, construction began on the city of Chan Chan, consisting of 10 palaces or citadels, the same number as those of the Chimu rulers, until the arrival of the Incas, each of which would have been built by one of the rulers. It was a despotic kingdom that expanded through military conquests and ruled rigidly from Chan Chan, the capital. It developed a legal system that was quite severe, intolerant of theft, error, or incompetence. It was a centralized, imperial expansionist state that had conquered the Sican kingdom of Lambayeque with clear class divisions, inheritance of positions, and a very complex bureaucracy. Power resided in the sovereign or supreme chief, Chimo Capac or Chie Quich, who united the political and priestly powers, the curachas and the alayek, governors, the high urban bureaucracy, a group with a certain prestige and economic power, the fixla, or pilak, the artisans and the perpetual servants, llanas, and peasants in rural areas. This organization is a Moche legacy. Upon the death of a ruler, his heir only received political office, while the deceased's property and income passed to a group of his descendants as administrators. The deceased remained the ruler. Therefore, each ruler had to build his own citadel, inhabit it with his closest relatives, and organize his own administration with new officials. To obtain wealth, he had to conquer new territories, dominating much of northern and central Peru. The economic and social system operated through a network of rural-urban centers responsible for collecting and sending the tributes obtained to the capital, Chan Chan, from where the production, storage, redistribution, and consumption of goods and products were managed, organized, and monopolized. The people paid tribute to the rulers in products or labor. The people dedicated themselves to fishing in canoes called cabalitos de totora, agriculture, hunting, crafts, and trade, using bronze axes as currency. The economy was characterized by the exploitation of conquered lands, which provided tributes of food, crafts, labor, and so on. Labor specialization necessitated the operation of a system of exchange or barter, allowing for the acquisition of products and objects that each individual could not produce. New agricultural land was also incorporated into areas that had previously been desert. Agriculture, the basis of the Chimu economy, was practiced on a large scale and made it possible to maximize the agricultural frontier through techniques that promoted this activity, such as an extensive network of canals supplied with water from coastal rivers, the use of puquillos, a type of land, the construction of natural reservoirs to contain river water, and the use of huachaks, mahamaes, or sunken fields, a type of land with sunken fields, to harness groundwater. These were sunken agricultural fields where the sand was removed from the ground to cultivate the moist soil to grow vegetables in the coastal desert, allowing them to obtain several harvests a year. They knew all the native food plants, and their diet was supplemented by domestic animals, marine and freshwater species, and game and foraging. They cultivated corn, beans, sweet potatoes, cassava, potatoes, pumpkins, squash, chili peppers, quegua, peanuts, and fruits such as prickly pear, lucuma, soursop, pake, avocado, custard apple, tumbo, plum, and papaya. They also cultivated construction plants such as totora, reeds, and bulrushes. Cotton was the most important non-food crop. Guano from the islands was used as fertilizer. According to Spanish chroniclers, the Chimu had regional languages. The Sek language, also known as Talana, was spoken in Tumbes and Piura. Muchik, or Yunga, was spoken from Motupe to Chicasa. In the 17th century, Father Fernando de la Carrera reported its use in 26 villages along the coast and northern mountains, estimating the number of speakers at 40,000. Olmos was associated with the Olmos region. Kingdom was spoken in the Moche, Viru, and Chao valleys, and Pescadora language was spoken in Pacasmayo and Guadalupe. The predominant language among the Chimu was Quechua, related to Mochica, as Father Calancha, Fray Antonio de la Calancha, their own language, Quingnam, and a fisherman's dialect called Lengua Pescadora by the Spanish missionaries. Regarding its architecture, the polychrome wall decoration is based on friezes modeled in relief and, in some cases, painted, with designs of zoomorphic figures such as fish and birds, as well as geometric figures. The material used in its constructions was adobe, and one of the finest examples was the city of Chan Chan, the seat of the Chimu king. It covered an area of 18 square kilometers, divided into citadels built by each ruler as a residence, which eventually became their tombs. Between 50,000 and 100,000 inhabitants lived there, but only the upper class lived in the decorated buildings. The Chimu state and the city of Chan Chan relied on religion as the basis of their power. For the Chimu, death did not constitute the end. Heaven was merely an extension of the earth where humans continued to live in another sphere of the world, and the life that awaited them after death was merely an extension of their earthly stay with the same obligations or privileges. This is why they buried them with provisions and goods. Burials thus reflected each person's role and place within their society. They believed that the soul of the deceased traveled to the seashore, from where it was transported by sea lions to its final resting place on the islands. Chimu pottery is part of a long tradition developed on the northern coast of Peru over several centuries, which the influence of Huari failed to disrupt. Chimu potters were heirs to the moche tradition, although they adopted and blended elements from styles from the coast and the mountains, from Cajamarca, Pachacamac, and Recuay. The quality of their pottery was inferior to that of the moche as a result of mass production using molds, losing all artistic originality. They made vessels using sculptural and pictorial techniques with bas-relief decoration and geometric designs, including animals, plants, and fruits. Of particular note are the black globular bottles with a polished and shiny surface, bridge handles, and stirrup handles. These bottles feature a small sculpture, usually of a monkey, placed at the junction of the spout and the arch, on the neck of the spout. Also notable are the sculptural huacos. The pottery is identified by its black color, which was the result of firing the pottery at high temperatures in a reducing atmosphere, using closed kilns to prevent the entry of oxygen and its reaction with the clay. Chimu pottery served two functions, as containers for daily or domestic use, and ceramics for ceremonial use or for burial offerings. The former were crafted without much care, while the funerary ones show considerable dedication. Their religious practice, which began as peaceful as it was tranquil, gradually moved in the same direction of sacrifice as the surrounding area, eventually becoming bloodthirsty and cruel, entwined in a complicated aristocratic network of priestly castes, military men, merchants, and peasants, in the style of the Inca, which revolved around magical fetishism and a dark and gruesome ceremonial myth directed by the priestly caste for their political gain. At Huaca de la Luna, some tombs belong to adolescents aged 13 or 14, and there is another tomb that belongs to a child, as they sacrificed children under the age of 5 to their gods, to the moon. Their bodies were wrapped in colorful cotton blankets and buried in the temple esplanades, accompanied by fruit, and chicha was poured over the ground.